All right, so get this, listeners. We are diving deep into Stoicism today. We've got a whole stack of sources on Epictetus.
Oh, wow.
And trust me, this is not going to be like your typical boring philosophy lecture.
Mm.
We're talking about a guy who went from, like, literally being a slave to influencing Roman emperors. Talk about a glow-up, right?
It really is remarkable. Epictetus's life, it's a testament to the power we have over our own experience, no matter what life throws at us.
Okay, you've got me intrigued.
Mm.
So how does someone who's born into slavery and dealing with physical challenges become this, like, philosophical rock star? What's the secret sauce?
Well, think about it. Epictetus found freedom, not by changing his circumstances, but by mastering his own mind. He realized that true freedom comes from within. It doesn't come from external factors.
So even though he was literally a slave, he found a different kind of freedom, a freedom that even emperors craved.
Whoa.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. And this idea is at the heart of Stoicism, the philosophy that Epictetus championed. It's about focusing on what you can control. Your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, the things that you can't control, other people's opinions, the weather, the economy, those are outside your sphere of influence.
Right. It's like when you're stuck in traffic, you're just fuming and getting nowhere. Stoicism would say, hey, you can't control the traffic, but you can control how you react to it.
Exactly. And this is where the dichotomy of control comes in. This is a core Stoic principle. It's about separating what we can and cannot influence. We often waste so much energy stressing over things that we have absolutely no power over.
Yeah, so by focusing on what we can control, we actually gain more freedom. That's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it?
It is, but think about it this way. Imagine two people. One, a CEO at a Fortune 500 company who's constantly worried about the stock market and competition, versus, like, a small-town baker who finds joy in crafting the perfect sourdough loaf, who is truly freer.
Yeah, I see what you mean. The baker may have less worldly freedom, but they're not letting external factors dictate their happiness.
Exactly. And even within this idea of focusing on what we can control, Stoicism gets even more nuanced. They talk about preferred indifference, things like wealth, health, even relationships. They're good to have, but we shouldn't be so attached to them that we lose our inner peace if we lose them.
Whoa, that's deep. It's almost like Stoicism is giving us a mental framework for navigating the ups and downs of life without getting totally thrown off course.
You got it. And that leads us to how Epictetus viewed freedom. It wasn't about social status or possessions. It was about not being a slave to your slaves, not letting external things control your emotions.
Okay, that's a powerful image. So are you saying that even someone in a position of power, like an emperor, could actually be less free than someone who has mastered their inner world?
Precisely. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, was a devoted student of Epictetus. Imagine that. The most powerful man in the world, seeking wisdom from a former slave. It highlights that even emperors struggle with the same human anxieties and emotions that everyone else does.
It makes you realize that true freedom is more about inner peace, more than outward circumstances. But let's be real, life isn't all sunshine and roses. So how did Epictetus deal with the hard stuff?
This is where things get really interesting. Epictetus didn't just tell people to endure hardship. He said embrace it. He saw challenges as opportunities for growth. Think about an athlete training for the Olympics. They're pushing their body to the limit, knowing that the struggle will make them stronger.
Oh, so instead of seeing obstacles as setbacks,
Right.
you view them as stepping stones, like a weightlifter using heavier weights to build muscle.
Yes, and that mindset shift is crucial. Epictetus believed that adversity, like a sparring partner, helps us develop the mental and emotional muscles we need to thrive. He would say, don't pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a difficult one.
That's powerful. It's not about wishing for a life without problems, but about developing the inner resources to handle whatever comes your way.
Right, and this is where another key Stoic concept comes into play, intellectual humility.
Okay, break that down for me. What does intellectual humility look like?
It's recognizing that we don't have all the answers and being open to learning and growing. Epictetus famously said, if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid.
So it's about being willing to admit when we're wrong and embrace the learning process, even if it means looking silly sometimes.
Exactly. It's that willingness to be a student, to constantly seek knowledge and challenge our own assumptions. And you know what? This attitude is not just about philosophy. Think about the most successful people in any field. They're often the ones who are constantly learning, adapting, and admitting they don't know it all.
That's so true. So it sounds like Stoicism is about more than just thinking the right thoughts. It's about putting these principles into action in our daily lives.
Absolutely. It's not enough to just talk about Stoicism. You have to live it. It's about embodying these principles in your choices, in your actions, in your reactions to the world around you.
So just like a weightlifter can't get stronger by just reading about lifting weights, we can't become more resilient just by reading about stoicism.
Exactly. You have to put in the reps. Apply these ideas in your own life. See what works, what doesn't. It's a practice, a way of life.
So we've got this incredible life story and these powerful ideas about freedom and facing challenges head on. But did Epictetus's philosophy actually have a lasting impact?
Oh, absolutely. His teachings have resonated across centuries. And we're not just talking about ancient philosophers sitting around debating in togas. His ideas have helped people from all walks of life, including a pretty remarkable modern-day figure. Have you heard of Admiral James Stockdale?
I don't think so.
Who is he?
He was a U.S. Navy pilot who was held captive as a prisoner of war in Vietnam for 7 years. Imagine enduring that kind of hardship, that level of uncertainty and suffering. Well, Stockdale credited Stoicism, and particularly Epictetus, with helping him survive.
You're kidding. An ancient philosophy helps someone through a 20th century war. That's incredible. It is. He said that focusing on what he could control, his own thoughts, his attitude, gave him a sense of agency in a situation where he had very little external control.
So in a way, Stoicism gave him a sense of inner freedom, even while he was physically imprisoned.
Exactly. And that's the power of these ideas. They can help us find strength and resilience, even in the most challenging circumstances.
I'm starting to see why this stuff has stood the test of time. Okay, before we move on, I just want to make sure I'm wrapping my head around the core of Epictetus's teachings. What would you say are the key takeaways so far?
Well, it all boils down to this. True freedom comes from within. It's not about your circumstances, but about your ability to control your own mind and choose your responses. And challenges. Those are opportunities for growth. They make us stronger, more resilient, more capable of handling whatever life throws our way.
That makes a lot of sense. But I think some people might hear all of this and think, Stoicism sounds kind of grim. Like, are you telling me I just have to accept everything bad that happens and never complain?
That's a common misconception. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or becoming some kind of emotionless robot. It's about understanding our emotions, managing them effectively, and not letting them control us.
So it's not about pretending that bad things don't happen, but about choosing how we respond to them.
Exactly. It's about that space between a situation and our reaction. We always have a choice in how we respond, even if it doesn't feel like it at the time.
This is starting to feel like a superpower, being able to choose our response to life's curveballs, instead of just reacting on autopilot. So I'm guessing there's more to Epictetus's philosophy than just this.
Oh, absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface. There's a whole world of wisdom to uncover when it comes to applying Stoicism in our daily lives.
I'm ready to dive deeper. Let's unpack more of these practical applications.
All right, so let's get practical here. Remember we talked about focusing on what we can control?
Yeah.
Well, this leads to a radical redefinition of freedom. It's not about your external circumstances, but about your inner state.
So like, even if you're living in a tiny apartment, working a job you don't love, you can still experience a deep sense of freedom if you're not letting those things dictate your happiness.
Exactly. It's about finding contentment and even joy in the present moment, regardless of your circumstances. And this idea is actually deeply connected to another core principle of Stoicism, living in accordance with nature.
Okay, hold up. Living in accordance with nature.
That sounds a little vague to me. What does that even mean?
Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. Think about it this way. Nature is all about change. It's about cycles of growth and decay. There are storms and sunshine, calm seas and raging rivers. Stoics believe that we should embrace this flow of life, not resist it.
So instead of getting frustrated when things don't go our way, we should accept that challenges are just a natural part of life.
Precisely. It's about accepting that things will inevitably happen that are outside of our control. Loss, setbacks, disappointments. But instead of letting those things define us, we can choose to learn from them, grow from them, and move forward with a sense of purpose. It's like a surfer riding a wave. They don't try to control the ocean. They learn to navigate it, to flow with it.
Perfect analogy. And, this idea of living in accordance with nature also applies to our emotions. Stoicism isn't about denying our feelings. It's about understanding them, not letting them rule us.
So it's not about becoming some kind of emotionless zombie, but about learning to process our emotions in a healthy way.
Yes. Imagine you're feeling angry about something. Instead of letting that anger consume you, take a step back. Ask yourself, is this anger serving me? Is it helping me to solve the problem? Or is it just making things worse?
Hmm. It's like hitting the pause button on your emotions and giving yourself a chance to choose a more constructive response.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, we talked about virtue being another key part of Stoicism. This idea of managing our emotions wisely is actually tied to virtue.
Wait, back up. Virtue. I feel like that's a word we throw around a lot, but
Yeah,
don't really define. What did the Stoics actually mean by virtue?
good question. For the Stoics, virtue is about living in accordance with reason and wisdom. It was about striving to be the best version of ourselves, ethically and morally. They believed that true happiness and fulfillment came from living a virtuous life.
So it's not just about feeling good, it's about being good.
Exactly. And that's why things like honesty, courage, justice, and self-control were so important to the Stoics. They saw these virtues as essential building blocks for a meaningful and fulfilling life.
That makes sense. But how do we actually cultivate these virtues? Is it like learning a new skill, like playing the piano? Do we have to practice?
That's a great way to think about it. Developing virtue is definitely a practice like any other skill, and that's where the idea of putting stoicism into action comes in. It's about making choices every day that align with these principles.
Okay, give me an example. What would that look like in real life?
Let's say you're faced with a difficult decision at work. Do you take the easy route or the one that's more challenging but ultimately more ethical? A Stoic would say, choose the path of integrity, even if it's harder.
So it's about consistently choosing actions that are in line with your values, even when it's tempting to take the easier path.
Exactly. And it's not just about big, life-altering decisions. It's about the small choices we make every day, how we react to stress, how we treat others, how we spend our time.
Right. It's like building those mental muscles we talked about earlier. But this time, it's about strengthening our character, our
Yeah.
moral compass.
Exactly. And the more we practice making virtuous choices, the more it becomes second nature. It's like training a dog. At first, you have to constantly reinforce the behavior, but eventually it becomes ingrained.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. But let's be honest, not everyone is going to be thrilled about embracing Stoicism. Some people might find it a bit too rigid. Like, what about spontaneity and fun?
That's a fair point. But here's the thing. Stoicism isn't about suppressing your natural inclinations or becoming some kind of joyless automaton. It's about finding a balance. It's about understanding that true happiness doesn't come from constantly chasing pleasure, but from living a life of purpose and meaning.
So it's not about never having fun. It's about finding joy in the things that truly matter. Our relationships, our contributions to the world, our own personal growth.
Exactly. And there's a real sense of liberation that comes with embracing Stoicism. It's about freeing yourself from the tyranny of your own desires and anxieties.
It's like, instead of constantly chasing after the next thing that's going to make you happy, you find contentment in the present moment, regardless of your circumstances.
That's the heart of it. And that contentment, that sense of inner peace, is something that no external force can take away from you.
This is all so fascinating, but I think some people might be wondering, okay, this all sounds great in theory, but is there any evidence that it actually works? Like, are there any studies or real-life examples that show Stoicism can actually make people happier and more resilient?
There's actually a growing body of research that suggests that practicing Stoic principles can have a positive impact on well-being. Studies have shown that people who adopt a Stoic mindset, they tend to experience less anxiety, more resilience in the face of stress, and even greater life satisfaction.
That's amazing. So it's not just some ancient philosophy that sounds good on paper. There's actual scientific evidence to back it up.
Exactly. And beyond the research, there are countless anecdotal accounts of people who have found that applying Stoic principles has made a profound difference in their lives. Think about all the entrepreneurs, athletes, artists, and everyday people who have faced incredible challenges and overcome them with a Stoic spirit. They're living proof that these ideas can empower us to live richer, more meaningful lives.
I'm starting to feel like we should be handing out copies of Epictetus's handbook to everyone we meet. But seriously, where would you recommend someone start if they're interested in learning more about Stoicism?
Well, there are so many great resources available these days. For a direct connection to Epictetus's teachings, I always recommend the Enchiridion. It's a short and incredibly insightful collection of his key principles.
And for those who might find diving straight into ancient texts a bit daunting, are there any more modern interpretations or resources you'd suggest?
Oh, absolutely. There are some fantastic contemporary authors who have written about Stoicism in a very accessible and engaging way. For example, Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, is a great introduction to Stoic principles and how to apply them in everyday life.
And what about podcasts or online resources? Are there any you'd recommend for people who prefer to learn that way?
Definitely. There are quite a few podcasts dedicated to exploring Stoicism and its practical applications. The Daily Stoic is a great one. They offer daily reflections on Stoic teachings, which can be a great way to incorporate these ideas into your daily routine.
It's amusing to see how Stoicism continues to resonate with people today. Even though it was developed centuries ago, it's a testament to the enduring power of these ideas.
It really is, and I think it speaks to the fact that human nature and the challenges we face as humans haven't really changed all that much at their core. We still struggle with uncertainty, adversity, and the search for meaning. And Stoicism offers a timeless framework for navigating those universal experiences.
Right, it's like a set of tools that can help us build more resilient and fulfilling lives,
Hmm.
regardless of our external circumstances.
Exactly. And what I find most inspiring about Epictetus is that he didn't just preach these ideas, he lived them. He embodied them, even in the face of incredible hardship. He showed us that true freedom and strength come from within.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have the capacity to cultivate that inner resilience,
Yeah.
regardless of our background or the challenges we face. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Epictetus and Stoicism, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with?
If I had to distill it down to one essential point, it would be this. You have more control over your happiness and well-being than you might realize. It starts with focusing on what you can influence, choosing your attitude, and responding to challenges with courage and wisdom.
It's about recognizing that true freedom lies not in external circumstances, but in our own inner state, our ability to choose our thoughts and reactions.
And it's about embracing challenges as opportunities for growth, seeing adversity as a chance to become stronger and wiser.
It's a philosophy that calls us to live with intention, to focus on what truly matters, and to cultivate an inner strength that can help us navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, it really is a powerful idea, that we have this innate ability to choose our response, even when life throws us curveballs.
It is. And remember, Stoicism isn't about being some kind of superhero who never gets upset or frustrated. It's about recognizing that even in the midst of difficulty, we have a choice. We can let our emotions control us, or we can choose to respond with reason, with courage, and even with a sense of humor.
So it's not about suppressing your emotions, it's more about choosing how you respond to them, like not letting anger or frustration totally hijack your day.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You're the captain of your own ship, and those emotions are like the winds and the waves. Sometimes they're going to be rough, but you have the skills to navigate them and stay on course.
I love that analogy. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into Epictetus and Stoicism, what's the one question or idea you hope our listeners will take away from this exploration?
Well, if there's one thing I'd love for you to ponder, it's this. How could applying even just one of Epictetus's principles change how you approach a challenge you're facing right now? Maybe it's that big presentation at work that's got you stressing, or a conflict with a friend. What part of your life could use a little Stoic wisdom?
So it's not about making some massive life overhaul. It's about taking these nuggets of wisdom that we've uncovered and experimenting with them in our own lives.
Absolutely. Start small. See what happens when you focus on what you can control in a stressful situation. Or, next time you're feeling overwhelmed, try to see the challenge as an opportunity for growth. Even a small shift in perspective can make a world of difference.
I think what's really resonated with me is this idea that we have more agency than we often realize. We can choose how we respond to the world around us, even when things feel out of control.
That's the heart of it. And remember, Stoicism is a journey, not a destination. It's not about achieving some perfect state of Stoicism. It's about continuous growth, learning, and striving to live in alignment with reason and virtue.
It's about embracing the process, the ups and downs, and finding meaning and purpose even amidst the inevitable challenges that life throws our way.
Beautifully put. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Well, thanks for joining us on this exploration of Epictetus and Stoicism. We hope you found it insightful, maybe even a little inspiring. Remember, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep to the world of ideas. Until next time.
Happy exploring.